Hey everybody, Krista Sutton here. I am an executive coach as well as one of the co-founders of Ideal Personality. Thank you so much for joining us today for this webinar. We are going to take, about 20 to 30 minutes, and we're going to be diving into Ideal Personality and talking a little bit about your results and what Ideal Personality can do for you. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right on in. I'm hoping you've already had the opportunity to take your assessment, the personality inventory. It doesn't take too long, and it's very simple. It's 56 questions, and our goal here is to be able to help you identify your innate personality, and we're going to dive into that right now. So, do you ever feel like this? Trying to understand the behavior of some people is like trying to smell the color 9. Now here's the thing, is that every single one of us, we have those people in our lives, and we care about them. Many times, we live under the same roof, or they're our coworkers, our friends, our colleagues, other family members. But we look at them on a regular basis, and we just kind of shake our heads, and we think, I just don't get you. I don't know why you do the things that you do, and I don't know why you say the things that you say. And more often than not, that lack of understanding causes a little bit of headbutting. It can cause a little bit of friction in our relationships. But the filter that I want you to use today for the purpose of the webinar is this. For someone on this planet, you are that person. You drive somebody crazy. They don't understand you. They don't know why you do what you do. They don't know why you say what you say. And you know what? That's okay. We were all designed to be different and unique. It's just being willing to understand one another that really can make the difference. So, connection and engagement and understanding. I think as human beings, we really all want it, and we need it. We're designed to live in community, and we want to be able to better understand ourselves. We really want to be able to understand our families, our colleagues, our communities, the people that we surround ourselves with. It is a foundational building block of any and all success that we will experience in any area of our lives. So why do we find it so elusive at times? And how do we re-engage with ourselves and also with others? It's actually a little bit simpler than you think. So let's talk a little bit about the team. Again, this is me. I am an executive coach. I'm a keynote speaker, and I am a corporate trainer, and I specialize in effective communication and employee engagement. I founded my business, Krista Sutton Coaching, back in 2009, and I love helping business professionals navigate that people side of business and life. And Ideal Personality, we were so excited to get this launched in 2018, but I had been previously with Another Assessment for 5 years as a program specialist, and I'm just so thrilled that now I have the ability to connect in a completely different way with a brand new tool that does so much more than I could have ever imagined. So I'm so excited that you are on here today with us. These are my amazing business partners, Jamie and Marla Keller, and I got to tell you, they are rock stars. They are forgiveness and relationship consultants, mentors, and coaches. They have a business by the name of Passion Provokers, and they have also just launched jamieandmarla.love on YouTube. You definitely want to check it out. And of course, they are the individuals that designed Ideal Personality. They've been using it as an onboarding tool with their relationship coaches for well over the last decade. It didn't have a name. It wasn't out available to the general public, but the three of us decided together that while they have that coupleship relationship side of the business handled, I was going to step in and I was going to take the business side of this assessment out into the world. And so the three of us are so excited. We truly believe that this is going to change the world, and we're really grateful that you're spending the time here with us today. So I want to share with you a few things, because I would be willing to bet that if you have interest in this and you're watching this, you've taken some kind of a personality assessment. I mean, there are those of us we're just kind of geeky and we love that stuff, whether we've taken it in our work environment, whether we've found them online, and there are a ton of them that are out there. Many of them are 4-quadrant assessments, and I've studied some of them. I'm familiar with a decent amount of them, and they've been a little bit frustrating for me, and there are a few reasons why. First off, unless they're properly facilitated, they're just not contextual. And so who we are at home isn't necessarily who we are at work. And that can really show up and can skew the results of a personality assessment. So all of the ideal personality assessments that you'll take are very contextual. They are specific to home or to your working environment and are written as such. The second thing is 4-quadrant assessments don't really take introversion or extroversion into consideration. An ideal personality specifically correlates 3 areas. There are 3 assessments available to you. We have our personality inventory, of course, that leads the pack, but we also have an introversion, extroversion, and we also have sensory preference. That is incredibly important, especially when you're wanting to understand yourself, and is very vital in being able to connect and understand others as well. So also other assessments, they tend to throw they throw all the positive and the negative things all together. And I don't know about you, but I have a tendency, and it's my humanness, that I really only pay attention to the bad stuff and I don't really notice the good stuff. And so how that showed up for me was I had taken an assessment probably 15 years ago. It was a 4-quadrant assessment, and the results came back and they told me that my personality, that I was a very natural communicator. I was outgoing, enthusiastic, engaging, flaky, irresponsible, and unreliable. Yeah, that kind of hurt because all the good stuff went out the window and all I could think of was, I don't want people to think I'm like this. Oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? There's nothing wrong with me because many of those seemingly negative aspects of personality, they're perception-based. And with the awareness that a very well facilitated assessment can do for you is to help you perceive others and understand where they're coming from in conversation. And then last but not least, I just mentioned this a second ago, is they don't address the role of sensory preference. That plays a huge piece for us, even in the workplace. Of course, sensory preference is important in all areas of our lives, but I think we kind of leave it out at work. Knowing if you're auditory, visual, or kinesthetic in your different environments, that weighs very heavily on your ability to perform and to show up as your best. So, what if you could understand yourself in a way that reached well beyond just personality? Would that benefit you? What if you could learn to identify personality traits and also communication needs in your work environment or in your home environment in a way that allowed everyone to feel honored and heard? What if you could identify ways to bring out the best qualities of yourself and your team in your working environment or your family at home so that your organization or your family ran like a well-oiled machine? I mean, it should, right? That's where you find the most enjoyment. That's when you're working in your truest and best space. So, and also, what if you could understand how your brain uses energy? And the part that plays in exhaustion, adrenal fatigue, burnout, overwhelm, depression, all of the yucky stuff that tends to show up in life for us. What if you knew how your brain used energy? That would make a huge difference, wouldn't it? So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the 4 different quadrants of the brain. There are 4 different quadrants, of course, and we're going to dive into each one of them. And I want to share with you a little bit about what you're seeing here on the screen. So you'll notice that inside of the brain, each of the quadrants has a title. They're each healthy. And outside, you'll see where it says conflicted. And I want to explain this. As I just mentioned a couple of minutes ago, other assessments, when you take them, they have a tendency to lump everything together. And so it's difficult to look at the good stuff in addition to some of the bad stuff. So I want you to understand that the healthy traits that we're going to be talking about, that's what you show up when you shine. That's how you show up when you truly, truly shine. And the conflicted, anytime anger, frustration, stress, worry, angst, any of the yucky stuff, which isn't necessarily bad. Sometimes we need stress to move us forward. We need worry or anger or frustration to engage us, to do something different, to make a change, to take action. So those traits aren't necessarily a bad thing, but many times it's not even that you're displaying intentionally these conflicted personality traits. However, the other people that are around you, especially if you're left brain and they're right brained or vice versa, you can be perceived to be something that you may not be intending. That awareness piece alone is worth its weight in gold. Wouldn't you agree? So let's jump right on in and let's start here at the top of our left brain and let's talk about director personalities. So for those of you, if your highest score on the test is director, then that is your brain lead. Now, hopefully we will get to have an in-depth conversation, because there are ways that you can take the test that can be a little off, and that's when you're over adaptive. But that's going to require you and I talking together on the phone. But let's talk about this healthy director. For those of you that score very high, that your highest score is director, you tend to be very data and fact driven and blunt and to the point. You need to be careful, because some people can get a little overwhelmed by that. You're a linear thinker. You are money motivated, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you're motivated to earn money or to have money, but it's the number piece of that that motivates you very highly. You're very black and white thinkers. Black is a color, white is a color. Gray is not now, nor has it ever been, nor will it ever be a color. You definitely, there's right, wrong, good, bad, black, white for you. And also, directors tend to be very competitive, either with themselves, with others, or both. Now, director personalities need to be very cautious, and those of you that aren't directors, you know someone, so pay attention to this as well. When they're conflicted, when there's any kind of conflict in any conversation or relationship, directors can be perceived, sometimes they can show up as, but they can more than often be perceived to be that demanding personality. They can be a little intimidating and come off as offensive and a little bit like a bully. They can intimidate people, especially right-brainers, because right-brainers want people to like them, and that blunt and direct, the way that directors speak, so blunt and so direct, it can be perceived as, you know, being a little intimidating. They need to be very, very well aware of that, because they're very black and white thinkers and they're very focused. Directors sometimes can have a tendency to fall into that workaholic category, so they need to be very, very aware of that as well. So let's go ahead and drop down and let's talk about the sequencer. We're gonna stay in our left brain right now. Sequencer personalities, when you're healthy, okay, when there's no conflict, this is what makes you shine. You get stuff done. You are the list makers, the taskmasters, the rule followers. You're very efficiency driven, and you make excellent teachers and trainers because of all of those traits, and you're very, very straightforward. Now, you do need to be a little bit careful, though, because when there's conflict, when there's that little bit of conflict in a conversation or in a relationship, sequencers, bless your hearts, you become micromanagers, and it's going to come as a shock to you, but nobody likes that. Nobody likes to be micromanaged. And so sequencers, be very well aware of that, because you have a tendency to put on the blinders and get so hyper-focused. What can happen is the right-brainers in your life have a tendency to look at you and think that you're emotionally unavailable, and it may not necessarily be accurate, but again, everything is perception. So what happens is that you put those blinders on, you get so focused because you're so results driven that you don't really know what's going on peripherally. And so you'll hear things from people in your life like, it's like you're not even in the room. I don't even know why I bother talking to you. You just seem so disengaged and disinterested. So if you're hearing that from people in your life, be very well aware that's probably where it's coming from. And while it is a perception thing, it's an awareness that you do need to address. Also, sequencers, you can become very, very, very perfectionistic, and you can get so perfectionistic to the point where you get frustrated, like if I can't do it right, I won't do it at all, and you just walk away. You just check out. And that will cause you to procrastinate. So that's not a good thing. So be aware of that. Also, sequencers in that conflicted space, that's where social awkwardness kind of comes into play, especially for those of you that are introverted. And a little bit of that OCD, that spectrum that does include Asperger's and autism, also live in that space. And here's part of the reason is that sequencer mind, because you're so data driven and fact driven in your left brain, is that you are you're almost on observational overload. It's like you hear everything, you see everything, you take in and you download everything. One of the best self-care tips I could ever give a sequencer is for them to realize that, especially if they're an introvert, they need time alone. They need to have that downtime so that they can let their brain finish processing, so that they can compartmentalize, because they do that better than anyone else. They can compartmentalize, and then they can move on to the next thing in their lives. So now that we're done with the left brain, let's jump on over and talk about the right brainers. So let's talk about creators, creator personalities. bless our hearts, I happen to be a creator. Creators are big picture thinkers, and they have that big picture point of view, the 30,000-foot view. They are very motivational and outgoing. They need a lot of variety. They get bored easily. They like that constant stimulation, that constant, they love change. They actually crave change, and they are great communicators. They love engagement. But they do need to be very, very careful, because when that conflict shows up, they do appear to be very scattered, you know, a little impractical, sarcastic. Now, they're opposite brain of a sequencer, and sequencers love those details. Creators don't. They are not about the details. Remember, their view is up here, so their 30,000-foot view, where that sequencer, boy, everything is the tree. For the creator, everything is the forest. So that's why they love that variety. They love being able to have that engagement. So in that conflict, be very careful, because you're not detail oriented, and sometimes you can show up as being scattered, very you know, very impractical, very a little immature, and you know, incredibly sarcastic. We're funny. Creators are very funny personalities, but I'm just going to tell you right now, those of you that are creators, please be aware of this. Those of you that aren't, I'm going to give you a big piece of understanding, because creators can be in a large room of people, especially extroverted creators, and they'll say something that's funny, and like only 3 other people laugh, and it's because they're creators and they got the sarcasm, while other people are looking at them going, I cannot believe what they just said. So be very, very well aware of that, those of you that are that creator personality. Again, we also can come across as being very irresponsible. You know, we don't read documents, we just sign at the bottom, we don't read contracts. And we can also appear to be a little on that self-centered side. So be very, very well aware of that. So now let's go ahead and drop down. Let's talk about our unifiers. Our unifiers are our relationship-driven people. Not that the rest of us don't love people, but that's their MO. It's what they do. They have a servant's heart. They are very others-focused. They are the peacemakers. They make great moderators. They always see both sides of the story. They're very inclusive, and they're kind. Again, it's not that the rest of us don't like people. That's how they show up in the world. They are very kind. But unifiers need to be very cautious, because, and for those of us that aren't unifiers, especially in any kind of a decision-making process, they're the slowest to make decisions. Sequencers are too, just for a totally different reason. Unifiers, you'll always hear from them that they need to think about it, sleep on it, pray about it, talk to their husband, consult their psychic, whatever they need to do, because a unifier is not going to make a decision until they've had that opportunity to kind of take into account how that decision is going to affect every single person that it possibly could before they give you a yes or a no. So just keep that in mind. So unifiers in that conflicted area, in that conflicted space, they don't do conflict. They don't like to butt heads. They don't like arguments. They don't do change unless the person who wants the change is excited about it and it's for the good of the organization or the people. As a support person, then they'll be on board. But they're not the instigators of change. Not big fans of it. They can appear to be indecisive for the simple fact that they don't make decisions quickly. They have to think about it and pray about it. They can, because they love on people so much and they do it so well. Sometimes when they're in that conflicted space, especially if they're scared or stressed or worried, they can be perceived to be a little needy or a little clingy. And sometimes when they kind of get pushed into making a decision by one of the 3 other personalities, then they kind of push back, and that's when you're going to see a little bit of that passive aggressive behavior. So this is just a really short overview of the 4 personalities. And again, I'm looking forward to getting to have time to spend with you and look at your assessment results. Draw your graph. We're not going to have one here today, but I want to be able to draw your graph out, have a conversation, and make sure that you're not over-adapted in an area. And speaking of over-adapted, let's talk about how your brain uses energy. I'm going to use myself as an example. I'm a creator personality. So when I take my assessment, my highest score is creator. The reason for that is that each of us, when we're born, we have one quadrant of our brain that just lights up. Okay, that's where the majority of our talents and our gifts and our passions and our desires live, is in that quadrant. What drives us, you know, when we're little and we think about what we want to be when we grow up, it comes from that quadrant of our brain. But we use all of our brain, and as we start to grow and as we start to develop, our brain adapts, and we're designed to adapt. It's beautiful and it's wonderful. We should adapt. But it's the way that the brain uses energy, and sometimes roles that we take on in our lives can cause an adaptation that isn't necessarily the healthiest for us. And here's what I mean. So looking at this creator piece, for me as the creator, that's my innate personality. That's the personality core that I was born with. And as I began to adapt, as I began to grow, I started to take on these manageable personality traits to the immediate left and to the immediate right of my creator, which are director and unifier. They make sense. They work well. They actually, not only do they work really well with that innate personality, but those manageable personalities actually lift up and accent your innate personality very well. They play very, very well together. It's a very natural, smooth move. However, what can happen, because the way that the brain works, the energy in our brain and the way that we access parts of our brain travel through what are called synapses. Synapses can cross fissures. Now we have two fissures in our brain. You can see here at the graph, we've got the one big one that goes right down the middle, but we also have one that kind of comes across, and that's what causes the quadrants, and that's what you see here in front of you, are the 4 different quadrants of the brain that are caused by these two fissures. Now, the synapses can cross one fissure, but they can't cross two. So as a creator, if I need to access any of the abilities that live in the sequencer portion of my brain, I have to go over through director and down into sequencer, or down into unifier and over to sequencer. That takes a lot of energy. That uses so much of our brain's energy. And so what can happen for us is we take on a role, or we have an experience in life that may cause us a necessitated personality. And that's what that cross brain is that necessitated piece of our personality. Now, what happens is that many times that can become something we become really good at. We can train our brains to do almost anything. We can train ourselves. We can learn. We have that ability. But what happens is if we get over adapted in an area and that becomes what we're good at, it can cause a whole lot of problems. And I'll just share my story with you quickly so you know what I'm talking about. Like I've told you, I'm a creator. Well, I have been married to my phenomenal husband, Christopher, for a little over 13 years. We have an amazing family, 6 daughters, and now we have 5 sons-in-law and 8 grandchildren. And when Christopher and I first got married, I went from being a single mother of 3 who worked from home to being a married mother of 6 who still worked from home and had a husband who was driving trucks. So he was gone. He worked long hours. He didn't do over the road, but he was gone long hours. And so there were days I kind of felt like a single mom of 6. Now, my girls from my first marriage were in junior high and high school at the time. And I inherited 3 amazing little girls who happened to be in kindergarten, 1st, and 3rd grade. So now I have 6 girls in 3 schools and 27 directions between church and after school activities, and it was absolutely crazy. I had to dive into that sequencer. It was a role that I took on, and I took it on very willingly. But I had to dive deep into that sequencer part of my brain and become that list maker, taskmaster, get it done, be very, very, very efficient. And it isn't natural, it isn't innate to my wiring, but I got really, really good at it. As a matter of fact, I got so good at it, 2 things happened. First thing, almost any other assessment that I take, because we take them based on what we're good at, I will show up almost equal as whatever their version of creator and their version of sequencer are, even though I'm not a sequencer, not even close. And the second thing is that my body and my brain were exhausted. As a matter of fact, earlier this year, I was so overwhelmed and exhausted by living in that sequencer part of my brain that the world really only got me about an hour a day. I would get up, I would get my hair done, and I would look cute, and I would go meet with a client, or I would go to a meeting that I needed to attend, or I would go to a training that I needed to facilitate, and then guess what? I was done. The rest of the time, you guys, I was faking it. I was totally 100% faking it because I just was mentally burnt out. The doubt, I mean, that is such a frustrating place to be. And not only was I mentally burnt out, but then it started to take a toll on my body. And I found out that I had adrenal fatigue and a list of other health issues I'm not even going to get into. I've spent the better part of this year trying to step out of that. Now, while I was so incredibly blessed getting to start working with a naturopath back in April, and that did so much help for me, the next big step for me was learning about Ideal Personality, working with Jamie and Marla, and understanding the wellness piece behind the assessment. This is a great HR tool. This is a great business tool. This is an amazing and powerful sales tool. This will teach you how to communicate and connect with people that in a way you've never done it before. I love working with my clients and teaching and coaching and training them on how to do it. It makes my heart sing. But even bigger than that is the wellness piece, because when you know how your brain works and you know how to take care of yourself in a way that it completely changes the game, you get your health back. You get your brain back. You get your life back, and then you're able to move forward and create amazing things. So again, you guys, thank you so much. Thank you so much for tuning in, checking out this webinar. Appreciate you more than you realize. I'm hoping that this information was able to bless you and benefit you. And again, looking forward to spending some time with you to be able to go over your assessment and help you discover and help you to be able to discover your ideal personality.